Hi everybody, my name is Shona Nichols and I'm going to have the pleasure of chairing this panel today. And I am absolutely delighted to say that I have got 4 people joining me, all from very, very different backgrounds, all very, very active in the area of creative dance in all sorts of different ways. And I'm going to hand over to them straight away to introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about their journeys and who they are and where they've come from and where they are now. So I'm going to start with Julia, who's been really kind in bringing these lovely people together. So Julia, over to you.
Thanks, Shona. It's really fun to have this opportunity to be here. So my name is Julia Pond, and I fell in love with dance as a young child and studied kind of ballet, tap, and jazz for many years in my local school. And then I started training more seriously when I went to a conservatory program for uni, where I spent hours every day in the studio sweating and diving deep into the practice of dance. And then my career has actually taken some different twists and turns that I wouldn't have predicted when I was training. So I worked as a dancer in New York for a few years, but then I also had the chance to spend time in Italy, where I was part of an experimental artists community called the Art Monastery. We were playing with the relationship between contemplative works of meditation and art and community. And I've also then began to do a lot of my own freelance work. So I began to create my own pieces, working across sometimes dance and music, and working with treating the music like a part of the choreography, bringing musicians into the space with dancers. And I also spent a lot of time engaged with some historic dance work, the choreography of Isadora Duncan. So I guess my dance work has sort of been with lots of different influences and interests, and I sort of mix things together for different projects. For about 9 years in my 30s, I also kind of ran a parallel life, working in content and editorial for a travel website. Which kind of grew out of the desire to have a more fun day job than waitressing, and then became something interesting in itself. And now I'm completing some postgraduate work at Trinity Laban, so I went back to school and always learning. And I'm really finding that the experience I had outside of dance is something that is very important in what I'm making now. I'm really feeding it back into my work now. So I sometimes, I suppose I'm one of those people who's had a squiggly career, but the through line has always been dance and movement and art. And I'll hand over to Annie.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. My name is Ani Javian. I'm happy to be here and speaking with you today. I am based just outside of New York City in the US, in New Jersey, where I teach at Rutgers University in the dance department, which is a conservatory style program. And my path here, I think many paths in the arts are squiggly, no matter which way you look at them to a degree. But like Julia, I started dancing at a young age in a local studio, doing the same tap, ballet, and jazz theater dance setup. And going to college for me in dance was sort of a question mark. I didn't quite know that I wanted to do that, but I happened to end up at a university that had a good dance department. And so I fell in love. That's where my relationship to dance really broadened. I learned that dance could be a number of different things, that movements could be art and not just entertainment to a degree. And then I moved to New York and began a freelance career there for 8 years. And I started a collective with some other women that I had graduated from college with, and we produced our own shows and shared resources and made it happen together. So I was making choreography, I was making work, I was dancing for a number of people, running from this part of the city over to this part of the city, and I was on the subway 5 times a day for 45 minutes each time. And that whole time I was working at a restaurant as well. And I was working at that restaurant to have steady income or some sort of steady income, and also to have health insurance. I was lucky that they provided health insurance. And then alongside that too, I was dancing with a company that worked multi-generationally. So the youngest dancer was 22 and the oldest was 92 at that time. And through that work, we did a lot of, we performed with these older adults, and we also were in community centers and senior centers. And I started to fall in love with teaching. And so I decided to go to graduate school, and I did that at the Ohio State University, which is in Columbus, Ohio in the States, where I practiced a lot of pedagogy, and I practiced a lot of making work. And then I was fortunate to start teaching at universities. I've had a position at Ohio University in Southeast Ohio for a few years, and now I've landed at Rutgers. But yes, as linear as that might sound, it was indeed squiggly for me as well. And I'll pass.
Annie. Thanks, Annie. Should we move on to Irene? Do you want to tell us your story?
Yeah, it's really interesting for me too. So my story, what can I tell you that can interest you? Look, so I started in Italy, where they don't exist. Dance universities, they don't exist. So there's only like vocational courses. Only recently, maybe short, like 10 years ago, a proper university of dance was born in Rome, but there's only one. So after having done 3 years of vocational training, I started going around and taking workshops with dancers who were coming from Europe in Italy to teach. And I fell in love with contemporary dance, specifically a deviate dancer called Wendy Houston, who introduced me to contemporary dance and gave us exercises to dance with closed eyes, which was really innovative for an 18 years old like me. I'm 40 years old now, so we talk about 1998. And I was very inspired, and I started doing workshops. I was really bad at auditioning. So my path was like, I got really anxiety from auditioning I tried, and I still do auditions sometimes, but the path for me was more going forward through doing workshops, liking the artists which I met, and then through creating a personal relationship with them, or like going to talk to them after the workshop, or asking them what they were doing after. That was more my path. So through doing workshops with guest artists around the world, I kind of carved my path and then started collaborating with some of them. What else can I say? Well, I moved. So I did a workshop with a French company. I ended up working with them for a month, and I was super excited as I was 20 years old. The project was a 2 months long project. And after that, there was nothing going on. So I was back to scratch. And then, so I started working somewhere, probably in a fashion shop. And then I ended for 3 months. Then I decided that wasn't for me. I really needed to pursue something in dance. And I decided to go for a trip to Amsterdam, where a friend of mine who was training with me in the dance school said that he was there working for a company, and said, you should come to Holland because there is dance everywhere. And so I went for a week of a trip a holiday trip. I applied for a dance school there, University of Dance, and I got an audition. I did get in, so that audition went well. And then from there, I started working in Europe more. I collaborated a lot with theater. So I used to teach actors and like do more like physical training for theater people who like to move, or that they wanted some movement in their production. And that was mainly like the path that I took, although I really was faithful to the dance, and like I still did like dance projects in the pure dance fields. However, still doing auditions here and there wasn't my path. So I loved being on stage. So after choreographing actors and being involved in theater production as a choreographer, I still wanted to perform. So I collaborated with an actress, and we made our own show. So we founded it ourselves, and we brought it out. And then after a while, we got funding from England, from the Arts Council of England. At this point, I was based in London. And then we went on tour everywhere, in Italy, in Denmark, in UK. So I guess here my path took the road of someone who is, let's say, I made something for myself that I couldn't access, let's say, by auditioning for someone. Turned out it was a good idea, because you get visibility, and sometimes you don't get auditions, not because you're not worth it, but it's just because you might not be right for that production, because maybe they have already someone that looks a little bit like you and that moves a little bit like you, so they're looking for someone else. So, you know, you really have to be there at the right time for them, and it's not always the only path.
That's great. Thank you, Irene. Should we just let Mel have a word and tell her story, and then I'll come back to you all with some more specific questions as well.
Sure. Thank you. So, yeah, it's really interesting listening to everyone, because we actually have so many similarities as well. For me, I began the same. I started with modern, tap and ballet, little schools. And then I came into touch with contemporary dance, first of all at A-level. Had a wonderful teacher who had trained at Laban, and he was, you know, really inspirational. And so then I auditioned for contemporary schools and theatre schools, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do musical theatre or contemporary. So I just auditioned for universities and other conservatoires. And I first did 1 year at Laban, and then I actually went into year 2 and 3 at Bird College, Doreen Bird, which is more of a theatre stage school where you can still do a degree. So I had a nice diverse training. And then from graduation, I was very lucky to just start, I think, collaborating on lots of performance projects, just small, you know, fringe projects, small companies, physical theatre companies as a dancer. And yes, the audition circuit as well, which again was not really something that sits very well with me, because there's so many people and it brings all of that comparison. And so I did do some commercial work over in Greece, and then I came back and started to choreograph a little bit more, collaborate with some filmmakers in some music video, work with singers, work with actors, sometimes giving them some movement coaching. And I was forming similar, I think, to Annie. We were forming these sort of troupes. So I had like a collective, I had Chameleon Collective, I had Deco Dance Troupe, and we did all these really sort of strange, site-specific, site-sensitive pieces, and working with multimedia companies, so I would collaborate a lot as a choreographer with Secret Cinema and Future Cinema back in the days when they first began, and it was all very theatrical and immersive for all the audience members to come in, and they would get involved in that film, almost feel like they were a character in that film. So I was doing a lot of that kind of work, and as a dancer, more, I suppose, even more niche work. So I was working with a choreographer called Maddie Wynne Jones, who is now Maddie Wolf, and she was doing very emotionally driven work, and we were just a very small contemporary company, but I learned a lot through that. And I was working a little bit in opera as well, so, and I have many friends who have done sort of either work as a dancer in opera or maybe as a movement artist, which can be interesting as well, I think, because you get that sense of collaboration in a project like that. And also working once with Julia Pond herself right there. So yeah, many things. Nowadays, at the moment, I'm more into education as a specialist, but I'm also into well-being and creative projects around that to bring out the creativity and well-being and uplift for adults. I'm working with all ages, but I'm loving working with adults at the moment.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, one word that came out was you all sort of were saying that you have these squiggly careers. But the young people that we're talking to is many of them will be thinking at the moment about what's the next step? You know, do they go into college? And so it might be interesting to hear from all of you about how you made your own decisions about what you did as your next steps, and any advice that you can give students about how to tackle and present themselves at those interviews. And what I might do is start with you, Annie, and ask you very much as a teacher in a college, you know, what are you looking for when students apply and when students maybe come to you for an interview? And if you could sort of think about it, you know, generally, not just in the States, but also you know, in other countries as well, it'd be really helpful. And then I'll come to all the rest of you and ask you to add to that as well. So Annie, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Well, I am an educator, so I do think that education is important. I will say that. And I do believe that education is more than just simply getting a piece of paper that has your name and a degree on it. I think that education is a concentrated time for study, and it's a concentrated time to be in relationship to the thing that you're really interested in. And in this case, that might be dance. And it's also a time to receive really personalized mentorship on your work. So on your own dancing, on your creative projects. And I think that when students come to audition or come to interview programs that I'm familiar with, I think, and speaking from my perspective as well, my own perspective, I'm thinking we look at technique, right? Technique is a part of the audition. The dancing, the quality of dancing is a part of the audition. More important than that, though, is that you bring your own perspective to the audition, right? So you might go into an audition and there might be a ballet sequence that offers you age-old pirouettes and penchés and arabesques, right? But how do you do that? How do you bring yourself to the movement that's given to you? How do you show your own point of view inside of that? Each of us comes with our unique perspectives, our unique training, our unique histories, everything that makes you special, right? And indeed you are special. And so bringing that information in with you and not just simply trying to execute the movement just as it is given to you, perhaps, or offering style, offering your stylistic choices, offering your voice, asking questions, right? So often dancers forget that we have a voice to use as well. And so bringing that into the room. I also think that in interviews, something that becomes really apparent is whether students are already sort of engaging with the field in some way. Are they going to see work? Do they have an opinion on what they like, what they're drawn to, what they're curious about, why they want to be doing this work? That's all really, really important as well, and can really make a student stand out from amongst the crowd.
That's great. Julia, have you got anything to add to that? And maybe also, how does a student think about, is it a pure dance route they take, or should they be looking, at a more of a musical route combined with the dance, or, your opinion would be great to have.
Yeah, I think that I'm also seeing a question on the chat, whether we'd advise people to go to university or college, or whether there are other routes into the industry. And so I think that is applicable here as well. Like Ani, I think that the opportunity to do, as a young person, I do actually really think if you have the opportunity to do intensive training in the arts, it's invaluable. I think it gives you skills that are transferable to other disciplines as well. And I think that the mentorship, it's that dedicated support and ability to really immerse yourself in something that is really great. That being said, I remember I used to have kind of cynical conversations with my fellow students when I was training at the conservatory, like, we could go take class in New York every day and get like training from really amazing teachers and do the same thing as we're doing here. And, I think there is perhaps, that is also a way, right? Taking class, just going and showing up in places and showing up. And so I would never say, I don't believe in credentialism, which is that you're not worth it as an artist unless you have a piece of paper. I think that a lot of dancers I know who didn't get a degree sometimes feel like that disqualifies them from something, but I don't feel that as an artist who's worked with dancers and as colleagues or as people dancing in my work. So I suppose there's a both and. I do think it's a wonderful opportunity, and it is something that is absolutely worthwhile. But is it absolutely 100% necessary to make you valid as an artist? Definitely not. And then, looking at other things, again, it's that uniqueness. It's this, nobody else can be you, and you can't be anybody else. So everybody else is taken. So being you. And if you feel drawn to really go into deeply another discipline, why not do a BA in, literature and with a concentration in dance? I do think there are considerations professionally in terms of levels of immersion in technique, if that's where you want to go in the field. If you're more interested in kind of creative practice, a more interdisciplinary approach, maybe that's less important. So there's no one correct career path, but certain things or decisions to concentrate in one area might set you up better for certain paths. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, in other industry sectors, you can do kind of apprenticeships and things like this. Is there any kind of, dance apprenticeship route at all? I think we had one of those questions from, I think it was Isla or Georgie. It'd be interesting to sort of, is any views on that? Irene, do you know of any, or Mel?
Well, I was thinking about that as you mentioned it, but I can't think of any dance apprenticeship that don't come, like, that aren't offered from universities or colleges. Yeah.
Okay.
Like the college I've been in, like on the third year, you would go abroad and do an intern with like that is a really that's the most interesting thing to do at college. You study, and then you go out to try out, and then you come back in. But like coming from not an institution, and now I can't think of anything, but I will have a look and I will post it in case.
Mel, so you mentioned it, and I think Irene mentioned it, which was quite surprising to me, that you found you quite anxious, or you didn't like the kind of auditions. Can we sort of flip that on its head? Because we had a question from Tilly saying, do you have any advice for overcoming anxiety or audition nerves? So that's sort of, if everyone is feeling and does have those problems, how can you steel yourself to get through that audition in the best possible way? Mel?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's quite a common thing actually for dancers, performers to suffer with anxiety. And it's something that perhaps, we try to put a brave face on outwardly, but deep down inside you're, panicking a little bit, right? And I think that there are some very well-known techniques out there, and number one has to be your use of breath. So if you can start to invest time and a little bit of study and practice daily in terms of breathing techniques, that will help you no end, because actually if we think about it, breathing is our one thing that just keeps us grounded and keeps us going. And it's so important when you're performing, or if you're being interviewed like right now, or anything else. We have to remember to breathe and connect, especially if you're singing or acting or anything like that. But also, I think you can practice things like mindfulness. Some people find that meditation is really helpful, or yoga, or a yogic form of dance perhaps, that helps to just center yourself and make you feel grounded. Think about connecting to other people and really actually talking about those things as well. Don't try to hide it. You can talk about it and sort of find out how other people's experience is. But number one that I want to say is related to something that came up earlier, and that's that you are all unique. We are all absolutely unique. And I think that as a dancer or performer or creator, you can try to really dig deep and find out what is almost your USP, your unique selling point. What is the thing that you have that's really individual to you? So as a dancer, the only way I found I was able to actually take class on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, going to Pineapple to keep myself trained as a dancer and keep at the top of my technique, because I was too anxious to go to class for a while there after college and after all those auditions. And what I needed to do was to discover that looking around the room, yes, this lady has her leg right up here, and this one has amazing turnout, and this one has this, that, and the other. And what I had to find something, what do I have? And I found, okay, I have musicality. And so I think, try to find what you think you have and then really use that and develop that, because then you feel valid. And it's so important to remember we are all absolutely valid. We're all absolutely right where we need to be. And if you're not right for this job or that class or whatever, you might be right for something else. Don't be afraid to talk to your teachers or your tutors, even people that you're taking class with. Go and introduce yourself at the end of class. And if you're really passionate about their class or their style, perhaps you can talk to them about that and say, I'd like to do more of this. How would I do that? Ask people.
That's great. We've got quite a few questions coming in now. So what we'll do is I'll combine two of them and ask you very sort of quickly, just to let us know, so that we don't run out of time. So Ben Jones is asking, if you could give one piece of inspirational advice to a young person, what would it be? So one piece of inspirational advice. And then also Ellie Barnes is asking, is there a piece of dance or someone within the industry that you find very particularly inspiring that you think that they should maybe go and explore? So piece of advice and anything that you would like to point them to. We'll do a quick round on that. Julia, sorry to pitch on you first.
No problem. My piece of advice is to, whether your path leads you into what you expect with dance or not. Keep asking yourself if you're following a path that has heart for you. And if you are, then that, I've always found that is a signal that that's the right thing to be doing right now. Who to point out? I've been really enjoying, I've been working with, in my research, a woman named Florence Peake, who does very radical interdisciplinary work often with clay, and kind of really pushes the boundaries of what you might think dance is. So that's it for me.
Great. Irene?
Yes, so piece of advice I would say, if you find something that you love and you fit in, that's fantastic. But if you don't, you just make it yourself. Just make it happen. Find a good collaborator and just go for it, and people will come to you. And then I can tell you my favorite choreographer that may be of interest, and you might want to check it out. It's called Boris Charmatz, and I just wrote it on the chat here. And his work, L'Enfant, which is the child in French, sorry for the pronunciation, is a beautiful piece of dance, but also not only dance, is a very artistic piece made with movement, and I think it's very sophisticated, and I totally love it.
Lovely, thank you. And Annie?
I think that the one piece of advice I would give is to show up, to keep going, to just put yourself in the room, because we know that there are those anxieties, those things that can keep us from going, and just literally getting yourself there is step one. One of my favorite choreographers at the moment, and someone who's been a mentor to me over time, is a woman named B.B. Miller, who's a US-based artist, and I can put her name in the chat as well. And she makes contemporary, improvisational, often interdisciplinary works.
Great. And Mel, last one but not least.
So I would say, yeah, just connect to your heart. When you have a fascination with something, or an obsession with something, a movement style or something, follow it. And even if it takes you, you have to travel halfway across the world to follow that, go for it, because there's a reason why that is lighting you up. And also, someone who I find inspirational, well, I love the work of Crystal Pite, and Charlotte Vincent. If you don't know her, she's Vincent Dance Theatre. But also I love the work that is, the life work that is Lynn Simonson. She has developed her own Simonson technique in the States. And I first discovered that 5 or 6 years ago, and it's a beautiful anatomically aware technique. And that's something that I'm actually working on right now, and inspires me, because it's about injury prevention and dancing forever.
That's great, thank you. That will give them so many things to go and look at. And in terms of could you let us know what you think is really important for them to be doing now to prepare themselves to be successful, either in getting into college or following whatever their path is in dance, and maybe any words of advice about the industry. So again, a bit of a quick fire, because we haven't got that very much long time. And Julia, I'm going to go to you again and maybe do the same.
Sure. I think I'm actually going to repeat what Annie said. I think keep showing up, and don't take a no to heart. I'm seeing also a question about starting to create an online portfolio and sharing videos of their dance performances. I think this is certainly something that you will need a show reel, you will need some examples of your work, and that's really worth curating and investing in. I think it's important to balance that with privacy in your training and giving yourself permission to make mistakes privately in the studio. And so to not feel that every time you go into the studio, you have to post on socials. So just a balance there. I'll hand over to someone else.
So Irene?
So I'd say, the show up that Annie said is really sounding very fundamental to me. It's a very competitive industry. It's a very small industry as well. And there's a lot of dancers. So you really have to like it. It's a lot of hard work and it's not very well paid. So if you don't like it, you'll know it, because you won't last. But if you like it and enough, and you don't know this, the showing up and training every day for at least 3 years, 3-4 years, to going at it every day, it is the thing to do. And then what else was the question?
Well, I'll tell you what, let's pop over to Annie and Mel, because we're sort of running out of the time here and everything else. So Annie, maybe, your last few words and thoughts be great.
Sure. I would say, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, the internet wasn't available like it is now, and YouTube was not a thing. And so I would really encourage you to go see work live if you can, of course, but if not, then on the internet, search, follow different threads. The dance field is broad, right? There's everything from musical theater to the more experimental work with clay artists I heard Julia talking about earlier, right? Like, then there's everything in between. So there's lots of different avenues, and I think having a sense of what you're interested in is also really helpful in helping you develop that perspective and point of view. Of course, we all come with our own already, but then to help sort of continue to shape that and what you're interested in as you mature, as you mature into adulthood.
That's great. And Mel?
Yeah, so just to be very study specific in terms of courses, the different qualifications we have here in the UK, we have Key Stage 3, GCSE, we have BTEC, we have A-level dance, we have, if you want to train to teach, then there's Petals and Dettles, and there's also QTS, Qualified Teacher Status. If you're thinking about your dance training, you can do a degree, or you could do perhaps just a diploma. One thing I'd say, if you can't get into one of those courses yet, maybe take a year to do some work experience with a film company or with a theatre company or with a dance school, and get some experience and keep working on your technique, keep getting maybe some singing lessons or acting lessons or whatever else you might need for your particular college, if it's classical, whatever training, and try again. And don't be put off. It is competitive, but stay true to your heart and start to work and surround yourself with those people that you're really interested in and inspired by, and it should be good.
Thank you. And Julia, you hopped off. We lost you for a minute then, but you're back again now. So I am, seeing as you brought these lovely ladies together who have been so inspiring and just great to hear, about the variety of things that are out there in the world of dance. So that was really, really interesting for us to hear and your own experience. But Julia, I'm going to leave the last words to you. Is there any final piece of advice or inspiration that you want to give the students who'll be listening to this? So over to you, Julia, to finish us off. Thank you.
I just say, thank you for listening and trust that you have what you need, and you are enough as yourself, and that you will end up in exactly the right place for you, even though things might seem unclear and messy at times. Just to trust, keep going, and follow your heart.
That's great. So thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your careers, which I'm sure will continue to be squiggly. So thank you very much. See you. Bye.
Thank you.